In the next 5 minutes, I'm going to explain to you 5 things that I wish I knew when I first started mixing that nowadays make my mixes sound way more professional. So the first thing is mid-side EQ. So if you watch my shorts, you've probably seen I've talked about this before, but basically mid-side EQ is like a normal EQ, except instead of working with the stereo field, you're working with the mid channel and the side channel. So for me, I use it quite often on things like synths, where if I want to have that kind of shiny element of the synth still in the sides, I boost the high end of the sides, then I'll cut out that mid frequency, as synths tend to be quite mid and bass heavy, and a lot of the time it really clouds the rest of the mix. I also use it on drums, where again, I'll boost that high end, because a lot of the time we tend to forget about that really high end and that sort of shimmer and shine that comes through, as a lot of information is actually stored there that you're listening to, especially these days when we've got such good speaker systems that we can really hear those high end elements really well. So what I'd usually do is I'd take the overall drum bus, so all my drums put into one group, and I might carve out a little bit of the mids depending on how overwhelming it is, whether it fits in the mix well already, but usually I'll just do a small boost to the high end of the sides just to bring through that shine of the hi-hats and the kind of snap of the snare and any sort of little elements that really make the drums sit better in the mix. So the second thing is using the right microphone for your vocals. So this is something that took me a while to actually realize. I wasn't actually using the best microphone for my vocals when I was singing. So I used to use the Rode NT1A. That was my first ever microphone. And while it was a good microphone, don't get me wrong, it just wasn't suited for my vocals. Everything just sounded so harsh. And for my voice in particular, whenever I sung, it just wasn't sounding professional or how I imagined it in my head. And I spent months trying to fix this problem with just plugins and trying different EQ curves, compression, adding some delay and reverb, basically everything you could imagine in terms of plugins I tried, but nothing seemed to quite fix it properly. And that's when I realized the root of the problem was actually the microphone. So now I've switched to a Shure SM7B, which is a dynamic microphone, and it's much more balanced in frequencies than the condenser Rode NT1A that I was using. And for some people that may be a great microphone and it may work better for their voice, but that's something that you need to realize, is that not every microphone is going to be suited to your specific voice and the way you sing. And that goes for anyone you're working with as well. So for me, I found the Shure SM7B is the best. It may not be the best for you though. It's important to test these different microphones if you do get the opportunity. But the good thing about microphones is that if you buy one and let's say in a month's time you decide, oh, it's not quite the right one, you can just sell it for pretty much the same price as well. All music hardware in general, if it's kept in the same condition, can basically sell for the same price. Well, where I live at least. One place to talk about this stuff and discuss more about things that have worked for you and things that haven't is my free music production academy. So I've made this academy, which is basically designed to help everyone get from where they are now to that professional sounding level where everyone wants to be with their mixes. So it's a community of producers and like-minded musicians where we all improve together, and I continue to put completely free resources out there to help you really understand and improve your mixes yourself. So the link's in the description below. Do sign up and check it out, and I hope to see you in there. So the third thing is using small amounts of delay and reverb combined. So I used to use reverb a lot and think, it really gave that spacious feel, really helped my vocals heaps. But one thing that I've noticed is when you add just a tiny bit of delay, so not like obvious echoes, so maybe set the mix to 10% if you're using, say, a stereo delay plugin, and have the delay at about 90 or 100 milliseconds, maybe 120 milliseconds on one side if it's a ping pong delay. But basically the point is that if you have just a tiny bit of delay and then have the reverb on top, it emphasizes that delay just a little bit more to give your vocals so much more depth and color without sounding like it's doing this obvious echo. It's the small things like that which genuinely make such a big difference in your mixes overall, and just adding that little bit of depth that a lot of people would forget about. So the fourth thing is layering drum samples. So in the past, a lot of the time I've been looking for really specific drum samples or sounds that I think sound really good, and I'd go through like Splice or the Logic stock samples, and I'd try and find something that is exactly what I'm hearing in my head. But the reality is, a lot of the time there's not going to be that sound that you're imagining in your head, and you're going to have to create it yourself. So the way I do that is I layer different drum samples. So for example, with a kick, I might have the sub bass of one kick, and I really like that kind of low end. So I'll use a low pass filter to just let through 60 hertz or less. And then I'll use another kick in the middle, which is kind of my main kick sound that I really like, usually quite a punchy kick. And then I might even use another kick on top as well. But I'll make sure to EQ all these 3 different kicks. So I'm only taking the parts I like from each kick. And when you put it together, it makes the kick sound so much more full and powerful overall. So you can do that for a snare drum, you can do that for a hi-hat, for basically any part of the drums. Keep that in mind, and it's definitely a way to get that exact drum sound that you're after. And then finally, the last tip is saturation. So what saturation is basically doing is adding in these extra harmonics above your initial sound. So it's giving it a bit more color and vibrance, basically. If you think about a painting or a picture, when you're saturating it, you're giving it more color. That's what it's doing, but in terms of sound. And what this can do on elements like drums, or even your overall mix, it can really bring out some of those elements that you don't really focus on, but add so much more energy to the mix overall. And I use it all the time now. Probably my 2 favorite favorite saturators would be the BB Tubes plugin from Waves and the Sonics Oxford Inflator. And I'll use these on vocals, I'll use them on a drum bus, I'll use them on the overall bus when something is not quite hitting the way I want it to. And it honestly brings out just a little bit more energy, which is more than enough to completely get to that point that I want it to be at in terms of emotion and energy in the mix. So hopefully this video has helped you. Do let me know in the comments if you have any other questions regarding plugins, mix techniques, or anything really that you want to know. I'm happy to answer questions. If you do want to work with me one-on-one as well, it's something that I offer. DM me on Instagram at Jordan McRae Music, or if you want to just show me some of your mixes, something you've been working on, I'd love to hear from you too. So stay tuned because I do want to do more videos like this, so hopefully I'll see you soon.